I joined AEJMC in 1992 when I was still in the middle of my doctoral program. And I had 15 years of experience in journalism prior to that in television, newspapers, and as the managing editor of a business newspaper. And my journalism focus had been in media management. And that also was what my primary interest in my dissertation and doctoral studies were. But I was not in a position in a job that allowed me to focus completely on media management and economics. So while I was a member of the division, I wasn't active in it. And then in 1997, I came to a job that was my dream job at the University of Georgia and allowed me to focus entirely on media economics and media management and teaching and research and running a research lab. So in 1997, when AEJMC was in New Orleans, I went to the social and business meeting of MMEE for the first time. It was then MME. And I was immediately welcomed with open arms and swept up into the division. And in fact, basically drafted to take an officer position before I'd hardly gotten through the door. And part of the reason was at that time they didn't have any women in officers' positions because most of the senior scholars, the women who had helped found the division in the first place, had moved on into university administrative positions, and so were less active in the division. And Ken Smith of the University of Wyoming was the division head at that time, and he immediately snatched me up and said, we need you in the division, we need you to be an officer. And I was welcomed with open arms, and it really became my AEJMC home from there on. Because of my intense interest in media economics and management based upon my professional experience in journalism and my journalism focus, from the very beginning, I had had some connection with the division. But because of my faculty position and the areas of teaching and research my first faculty position and the areas of teaching and research that it required me to prioritize, I really was more active in some other divisions. And so it was simply that in 1997, when I was finally in a position where I could focus entirely on teaching and research in media management and economics, that was when it became clear to me that MMEE was going to be my AEJMC home. There are almost more ways than I can count, but I'll tell you a current story because, of course, now I'm technically retired from the university, although I'm still a research consultant and engaged in a number of international research projects on news media viability with international media development agencies. And back in about, I think it was 2000, when I was the vice chair of the division and therefore the program chair, we had a shortage of panel suggestions that had been submitted that year. And so I asked all the officers to submit a bunch of panels suggestions, and we all did. And one of the ones that I submitted was picked up by another division and became a piece of the program. And it was on managing newsrooms through disasters. It was right around the time of 9/11. We'd also had the Oklahoma City bombing. There'd been a major earthquake in California and a hurricane. And so that because one of the other divisions wanted that panel also, I put it together and brought in news directors that had experienced all those divisions. Well, fast forward 25 years to the COVID pandemic, and suddenly there is an intense interest in the impact that a pandemic has had on newsrooms around the world, both financially and their long-term survivability, as well as what we now call in management continuity, the ability to continue maintaining your operations through the middle of a disaster. And so I have gone back to that panel, and I was approached by a media development agency asking me, because of that panel and that work that I did back in 2000, to help them develop an international research project that would develop information on how newsrooms are managing themselves through this pandemic and through other disasters, with the goal of developing an international digital tool that will help newsrooms around the world figure out how to deal with these kinds of major disruptions and survive them so they can continue serving their community. So there you have it. 20 years later, 22 years after I put a panel together, it's become a major part of my consulting work. I've been part of any number of divisions at AEJMC, and they are all excellent. I would say that I've never been part of any division that has been more welcoming than MMEE has been, not only to me, but I've seen that passed on in generations of scholars who have come through since I first joined. It's also a place that's very intimate in the sense that real friendships develop between the members, and those friendships also include mentoring. So if particularly among people who are just coming into the organization, becoming part of this division is going to be a way to make friendships and connections that extend around the world, because it has a very international membership, with scholars of like mind and like interest, so that it will open up all kinds of opportunities for research collaborations, for teaching collaborations, for making connections with both practical applied research and scholarly research with your fellows around the world. And I think that while that's probably true in many AEJMC divisions, MMEE is a division that is small enough where you can become involved very quickly. And I would also say to people, you will be welcome into the leadership almost as soon as you join. There is always a place to become engaged, actively engaged, and not simply be a member. And you'll be encouraged to do that. And that will pay far greater dividends than you can possibly imagine.